Okay, let's get going. I was just glancing through here, when we were talking about defense. And I was talking about how you have to motivate your players to play defense, you have to motivate them to counterattack. Well, if you can get your players excited about playing defense, it boils down to anybody can play defense, and you have to make it important. And if you can get them to have a desire for it and understand the importance of it, and really get excited about playing defense, and you keep stressing the importance of it, and the challenge of stopping the other team from scoring, and that, and really get into that. It's a selling job on your part, but man, if you can get a team, and you need everybody to buy in. You can't just have one or two people. You need everybody to buy in on that, and it's just a matter of emphasis. There's another I like a lot of these old sayings. One saying is, you as a coach, you get what you get out of your coaching is what you emphasize. So if you're gonna, and so you got to pretty much decide, okay, what parts of the game am I really gonna? I mean, you have to work on everything, of course, but there's certain parts of the game that you really want to emphasize. And I started right from the very beginning. I've always emphasized defense and counterattack, and those were the two things that I worked on. And then, as the extra man became very important, I started emphasizing that quite a bit too. So, but and as I've said before, offense really takes care of itself. And but the motion offense is something that a lot of kids aren't used to doing, and they haven't grown up with it. And so it's something that you're going to have to introduce, and you got to sell that too. And I know that. I don't know if you remember the Redlands basketball coach that was famous for the University of Redlands. He was famous for that run and gun, fast break. I forget his name now, but he's written several books, and there's a lot of books in basketball on motion and movement offenses. And the extreme one where you substitute every 2 minutes, you substitute 5 for 5. And talk about a selling job. You got to sell your athletic director, you got to sell the parents, you got to sell the fans, and you got to sell your players, and there's resistance to that kind of a thing. I'm sure Chip Kelly had resistance at Oregon when he first tried a program like that. So it's up to you guys to really emphasize that program and sell it. And believe me, once your kids get into it, they're going to love playing it, and I don't think you'll have any problem once you can get them to do it, so. Now, practice. I've always been a firm believer that you do everything in practice that is probably the most important thing that you do as a coach. Again, you can do some tactics during the game and substitute people. That's about what you do in a game is you sub. You got to figure out when to sub, when to call timeouts, and and really when you think about it, everybody plays the same system, so you really can't, at least in football, you decide we're going to pass, we're going to run, what kind of play we're going to run. In water polo, we just pretty much do the same thing. So, but defense, you can play press or zone, so you still have to make some decisions there. But all these things you do, you have to prepare and practice. Bill Walsh, the 49er coach, and used to coach at Stanford. He was so prepared for games. In practice, he prepared his team. That was the thing he did the best. He would prepare his players for a game in practice, and they covered everything. He's the first coach that ever scripted the first 25 plays. So they go into the game, and they'd already have the first 25 plays already scripted ahead of time. And Bill Walsh he was so well organized. He would go to the business school at Stanford. You get these CEOs from these major companies, and he would give them lectures on how to organize their companies and stuff. So but he used to say, you go to a football game. He said, 20% of what happens is by luck, or a bad call, or the ball falls out of a guy's hand, or something. Some 20% you can't control. These things are going to happen anyway. But 80% of what happens you can control. And so if you do more with your 80% than the other coach does with his 80%, you're going to win the game. And his whole thing was preparation. And he did that in practice. So he prepared them for everything that could possibly happen. And they were so, man, something would come up in a game and they were already prepared for it, you know. And he even did things like, if something came up in a game that they didn't prepare for, well, he had a contingency plan for even the stuff that he prepared for. So, and that's what practice is all about. You're preparing your players to play the game, and you're teaching them. You're also teaching them the fundamentals of the game, but mainly you're preparing your players to play the game. So there's a lot of things that we do that are counterproductive, and these are kind of I call them the cardinal sins of coaching practice, and it's the 4 L's WD. Laps, lines, lectures, length, wasting time, and drills. These are if you do this incorrectly, you're really hurting your players, and you're hurting your chances of winning. First of all, laps, we've already talked about that. I will get into conditioning in a little bit, but we do way too much swimming. And we're the only sport that does this. I mentioned yesterday, but you don't see basketball guys going out running 4 or 5 miles before practice. You don't see football. Again, I keep using Chip Kelly as an example, and I think I gave you this quote yesterday. He says, we don't condition before practice or after practice, we condition during practice. So you have to work your conditioning into your practice. And the philosophy that John Wooden had at UCLA was keep them moving. We'll get into length here, but John Wooden, in a 1.5 hour practice, he would get more out of 1.5 hours than most coaches got out of 4 or 5 hours, because he kept them constantly moving. Between drills, he would blow a whistle. You're going from one drill to another. You had to sprint between drills. If he called you over to the side of the pool, the whistle come over, they had to sprint over. You shoot a ball and it goes out of bounds. If I had the philosophy that if the goalie blocks the ball and it's right there, the goalie can flip it back out. But if the ball goes anywhere else, it goes over the goal, up on the grass, you have to sprint to the ball, you have to go up and get the ball, and you have to come back in and you have to sprint back, get in line. And so always keep them moving. All your drills, your fundamental drills should involve some kind of swimming. Anytime you're teaching shooting drills, you can involve swimming and shooting drills. I'll show you a couple drills that I like to use. And then you do the counterattack drills. And this is what they do in basketball. Fast break, up and down, fast break, over and over and over and over again. And those are all forms of conditioning. And there's never a time, the only time that they're not swimming is when you call them over to the side, and we have to do that in water polo because the coach can't go out on the floor. So but you keep your what you're going to say, you keep it short, and you just get them right back and doing what they're supposed to be doing. So constant movement. You just, everything you do is moving. And then I was just telling somebody, when Marty Davis was on my team in my first years at Stanford, we swam 500 yards. We didn't do any long distance swimming, and it was 25 sprints. So, and then everything else was in the counterattack. And we were in the best shape of any team that we played, because we did it all the time in practice. So you don't have to do a lot of swimming. You were telling me that you went too hard at the beginning, and you had some shoulder problems, because these are kids that did play in the summertime. But if you have kids that play all summer, you can go right into your hard swimming right at the beginning of your practice in the fall. And the other kids, you just kind of have to, if they don't play in the summertime, you kind of just have to take it easy on them a little bit. And this philosophy of having a hell week, where you just pile stuff on, it just doesn't work. We had 2-a-day workouts for about 3 weeks before school started. And we went 2 hours and 15 minutes in the morning and 2 hours and 15 minutes in the afternoon. And you don't need any more than that. People like, like Rudic and some of the Serbian system, they're going 8 hours a day, and that's just crazy. So we'll get into that in a second. But as far as swimming laps, keep it short, and if you have kids like you had, that, they're not in really good shape when you first start out, maybe take it easy on them as far as swimming sprints in the first week or so, and they'll eventually work into it. So they get in shape pretty fast. Okay, lines. We put a goal here. We put the ball here. This guy swims up. We throw the ball over here. He shoots. So we got 2 people doing something, and we got 10 people in line doing nothing. So if you have 4 goals, even if you don't have 4 goals, you can divide your team when you're doing shooting drills. You can divide your team into 4 groups. So now you got 4 smaller groups instead of 2 big groups. And maybe you have 2 goalies. You do a shooting drill at this end. You do another shooting drill down here. Over on the side over here, you can do a leg drill, maybe a post-up drill, whatever you want. Whatever you want to do. You can have the same thing over on this side of the pool, a different kind of thing that you're trying to do, and then you rotate them. You blow the whistle. Just do this for 10 minutes, maybe less than that, 8 minutes, and then you rotate them. When they rotate, they have to sprint over to the other side and start it immediately. And you do that, and you get somebody. Everybody's doing something. There's very few people that are sitting around in this situation. If you have a scrimmage, and you've got 14 people in the water scrimmaging, and let's say you've got another 6 or 7 or 8 people sitting on the sidelines. They should be on the sidelines. They can be doing leg work. You can give them heavy balls. They can be passing the balls back and forth. You can have them doing something. You just don't want people sitting on the side just hanging on to the wall. Keep them, everybody occupied. And then when you sub guys in, they have to get in there quickly. And this all comes to this being organized. If you're organized, you've got all this planned ahead of time. You know who has to sub for who. There's nothing worse than a coach coming up and going and say, okay, you're going in for so and so, and see, and then wait a minute here, what did I? You're just not, I don't know who you're going in for, or who did you go in for? And so you're just kind of. This goes to my wasting time thing down here, but if the more organized you are, the faster things will move. And if you plan your practice ahead of time, you've got it all written down on paper. You plan your practice, and things are going to go smoothly, they're going to go fast, and they're going to go quick. So the line thing, there's no need to have big, long lines. I see this with little, 10-year-old kids at the Stanford club team. I go there one evening, and here's a coach standing on the deck, and he's got these little kids. He's got about 20 kids out there, and he's got one goal, and his 2 kids are doing something, and 18 kids are doing nothing out there. It's just driving me crazy. The other thing that coach did is lectures. If you have to talk more than 30 seconds to introduce something, it's probably too long. And this coach that had these kids in the long lines, he'd bring them over to the side of the pool. He'd talk for 10 minutes. These 10-year-old kids, then they go back out there, they stand in line, and then for about 5 minutes, maybe get one shot off. And then he'd bring them over to the side again and talk again. And these kids are freezing. It's nighttime. The water's a little cool. It's the middle of the winter, and same thing in timeouts. Same thing in your chalk talks before a game, even after the game. There's no need for long talks and long lectures. Now, if you're going to introduce a drill of some kind, take just a short time to introduce the drill. And the way I introduce a drill is I will put, let's say the drill involves 6 people or 8 people. I will put them out there in the pool, and I say, okay, this is what you're going to do. It's just that simple, and that takes a little short period of time. And then you do it. And then as they do it, if they're not doing something correct, then you can make corrections as you go along. But you don't have to explain every single thing. Even before practice, I know coaches that they'll have a meeting before practice, and they'll spend 15 or 20 minutes going over what they're gonna do in practice that day. And I learned this from Rudy. She said, the players, they don't have to know. They don't have to know. Why you tell them what they're doing in practice? You know, you just introduce it as you go along. The players don't really need to know. In fact, there are players, if you tell them what you're going to do, they'll pace themselves because they're waiting for something that's going to be coming up that's hard. Maybe towards the end of practice, so they'll kind of loaf the first part of practice. So I don't want them looking at the clock. I don't want them pacing themselves. I want them going hard all the time. Timeouts. Timeouts. Anytime you're talking, the players they hear and maybe understand the first few things you say, maybe the first thing you say. After that, it's just, And so you call a timeout and you say, okay, you got to, first of all, we say, you did something wrong. But you don't need to tell them what they did wrong, in that situation. You call them over, you tell them what you want to do. And you say, hey, we're going to do this one thing on offense, we're going to do this one thing on defense, just as an example. Or maybe just one thing that you want to do. And I swear, I watched some of these games, and Jovan's over there, again, a great coach, but he'll talk for 5 minutes. And even with his chalkboard and talking to do this, do this, do this, do this. You tell them 6 things to do, they're never going to remember any 6 things. They're going to remember the first thing that you told them. And even your kids that are younger, the younger they are, the less they remember. Their attention span is almost nil when they're down about 10 years old. And Ted Newland told me this once, the Irvine coach. He said, you talk for 10 minutes, they only remember the first minute. So just talk for 1 minute, instead of talking for 10 minutes. So we do a lot of talking that's unnecessary. And even when we're making corrections, when somebody has done something wrong, and again, John Wooden was famous for this, he would just, at the end of they wouldn't stop things until it was over. So maybe they're doing a fast break drill. They get down to the end of the pool, they finish it, and so he'll say, Sven, this is one of those players who wrote a book. It's a good book, by the way. Sven Nader, I think his name was. Wrote about, he was a center that played for Wooden. And he'd say, Sven, put your right hand here. 3, 4 words, 5 words, and that's it. Instead of saying, this is what you did wrong, and go into a long explanation, give them something they can do to correct their problem. If they have a problem, they're doing something wrong, you solve the problem for them by telling them, do this, do it this way. And keep it short, keep it simple, use keywords. It's hard to give an example, something like this, but after a while you can develop this and not waste a lot of time explaining things. I've always been a big believer in this, to keep it short, keep it simple. I think I got it from Wooden, because I was at UCLA as a graduate student when Wooden was there coaching. And so I read all his books, and he was just a master at this. The other thing he was a master at is length. By length, I'm talking about practice, long practices. There's nothing worse than a long practice if you're trying to accomplish something. And I don't know why, but the coaches from the Balkan countries love to go about 8 hours a day, and 6 hours of that is just completely wasted. Radko used to do the same thing. Our coach that we have now likes to do that. But they don't get, granted, they don't get the players year round, and so when they do get them, they like to do something for 8 hours. But even then, that's wasted time. At least 5 of those 8 hours is probably wasted time. And my belief, and I've always felt this too, the shorter the workout, the more intensity there is. So you want high intensity throughout the workout. If you do a 3-hour workout, it's going to be, at least a good part of that workout is going to be low intensity. Kids can't keep up high intensity for 3 hours. So I would say a 2-hour workout would be just ideal. Wooden used to go 1.5 hours with his basketball guys. And by keeping them moving all the time, they were in better shape than anybody in the country in basketball. Their fast break was just amazing. So this idea, keep it short and keep it intense, and stress the intensity. At the beginning of the season, I would tell my guys, we're gonna do less swimming than any team in the country. But the swimming we do, we're doing 25s, head up, they gotta be all out. When we go on the counterattack, that's gotta be all out. When you go from one drill to another, that's gotta be all out. You know, everything you do is gotta be fast and intense. And it gets to a point where the practice is almost harder than a game. They get the game, and they've worked so hard in practice, the game is easy after that, you know. So, the idea that you do an hour and a half workout and you keep them working with high intensity for that hour and a half, and they're capable of doing that for an hour and a half. They're not capable of keeping up high intensity for 3 hours or 4 hours. These 4-hour workouts, I'm just amazed. I don't know how you do it. It's just, to me, it's impossible. So, but again, you gotta, and if guys are loafing, you gotta nudge them. You gotta get on them a little bit, you know. And the first time we started doing 25s, and 2 or 3 guys are loafing 25. I said, we're only going 25. You know, why can't you go hard for 25 yards? Why are you loafing a 25-yard sprint? You know, there's no need for that, you know? And they had come from a program where they were saving themselves. Because maybe we do the 25s at the beginning of practice, and so they came from a program where they work out for 4 hours, and so they didn't work hard at anything in the early part of the practice. They ought to save themselves for the end of practice. So I had to convince guys, look, you go hard for everything we do. We're not gonna go long laps, we're not gonna go a lot of swimming, but man, everything we do has gotta be fast. And this is what you want in the counterattack. You want high speed on the counterattack. So you make them do that in practice. Wasting time is another bugaboo. You know, that counterattack drill I showed you, the one-way counterattack. So we're set up in front of the goal. We run a front court. Somebody shoots the ball. Everybody counters down the pool, and I look around, and the goalie doesn't have the ball. So everybody's busting their tails getting down the pool in the counterattack, and the goalie doesn't have the ball to throw it to them. So it's just pretty much a waste of, so you get a little bit of conditioning out of it, but everybody stops, and where's the ball, you know? Or is the ball floating in the middle of the pool? It shouldn't be there, and I want the other goalie, we're at one end, if there's a ball floating in the middle of the pool, I want the goalie from the other end to come out and get that ball and get it out of the way. But I want goalies to have 3 or 4 or 5 balls in their reach, you know, in the goal. Because I want to do these drills, I want to have balls. I want these guys to be able to counterattack hard and receive a ball. So I insist that that's the goalie's responsibility to always keep balls in the goal. If the ball is shot, you have to retrieve your own ball. Okay? Because you end up, you shoot the ball. Let's say you have one goalie, you have 6 balls. Eventually, all 6 balls will end up in the pool deck, and there's no balls left in the pool. So if you shoot the ball and it does not go inside the goal, your responsibility is to sprint, go to the ball and sprint to the ball, pass it back, and then sprint back and get back in line for whatever drill you're doing. So wasting time is, coaches waste time by organizing their teams. Your team should be organized ahead of time. You should know who should have blue hats, who should have white hats, who the subs are, and a real easy substitution system. If I'm doing a drill, let's say I'm doing a drill, I've got a 3-on-3 drill, okay? And I've got 2 subs over here on the side, okay? These subs are working their legs with heavy balls, okay? And I've numbered these guys. These 2 guys are number 1, these guys are 2s, these guys are 3s, this is 4, and this is 5. So we'll do the drill a couple times, and I'll say, okay, 1 and 2 out, 4 and 5 in. Just like that, and then it's real quick. And then the next time we do it for a little bit, then I say, okay, 3 and 4 out, and 5 and 1 in, or whatever, whoever came out, 1 and 2 back in, or yeah. And so you keep subbing like that, and eventually some guys only get in for a few minutes, but the next time around they'll be in for a couple of sessions. It kind of works out if you do the drill long enough. But this is an easy, fast way to sub. There's no confusion. Now, 6-on-6, make sure you have your teams organized ahead of time, who's playing against who. Sometimes you'll have 2 even teams, sometimes you'll have your starters versus your other guys. that's not so strong, and that's a decision you have to make, but have it organized ahead of time, have it organized how you're gonna sub. I subbed in practice the way I subbed in a game. I would have 9 players. So, and I broke that down into groups of 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I tried to have a 2-meter player here and a 2-meter defender here. Same thing here, 2 and 2-meter defender here. Same thing in this group. Didn't always work out that way, but we tried to have that as much as possible. So I would sub in a game. I started doing this, again, when Marty was on my team at the World University Games in Mexico City, when we only had 9 players, field players, playing at 7,000-foot altitude. So I'd sub 3 every goal. Every goal that was scored, we'd sub 3 guys, just to keep them fresh. And so I just kept doing that. And this also goes kind of the Wooden philosophy. John Wooden only played 8 players, and he didn't play much after that. But he made those subs feel real important, and he utilized them, but he didn't use a lot of players. And water polo, he started with 6, he started with 5, he played 8, and I'm playing with 9 players. So the way I would sub is I would put 7, 8, and 9 on the second team. Let's say my starting group is this. They're scrimmaging against the other group, so I got 7, 8, 9, then 10, 11, 12. Maybe a few more after that. But, so we would scrimmage, whatever we're doing in the scrimmage. I would sub out group A and sub in group C in for A. And then we go along, and then so that means group A would play with the second unit. Then the next situation, I would sub out group B, which is this group here, and sub group A back in. So now A and C are playing together, and group B is playing with the second unit. And then the other 3 guys on the second unit, I could use those 3 guys. If I had extra players, I would just sub those guys in and out for each other. Let's say I had 6 more players for those 3 positions, I would just keep rotating those guys around. So it's just but have it organized. Whatever you do, have it organized so it happens quick, and you don't have to sit there and just make decisions on who. And then sometimes you'll have an injury, or somebody's hurt, or somebody has to sit out. And then you have to change things around. But be prepared for that too. Yeah.
Is that something that you would like? Obviously, you had your 9 guys and they knew who they were. Would that be something where, like, as they came in for practice or something, you would say, hey, you're going to be the blue caps today, you're going to be the white caps to start, and so they get in knowing, hey, when we get to this drill, you're already ready to go. I mean, is this something you tell them before practice, or they already know, and you're just telling them, hey, group A, go get these caps, group B, go get these caps?
Yeah, I would, probably before we start the scrimmage, I have it already written down, real fast. I'd say, okay, so you three are A's, you 3 are B's, you 3 are C's. And we just substitute, but I'd have it all organized ahead of time. And it doesn't take, that's all it takes. And so I say A and B, blue caps, C, group C, and everybody else, white caps.
So you didn't keep these groups together when it came to like doing specific types of training, like these?
You can do drills with these
like
guys.
These groups were your stations.
Yeah.
Like group A, you're doing the 2-meter shooting drill right now. Group B, you're doing the
you can do that way
outside
too, sure. And that was Wooden's philosophy. The reason he only played 8 players is he wanted those 8 guys to play together. And the more you put in guys who aren't going to play, and it gets diluted, and that the more repetitions you give to your number 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 players, it takes away repetitions from your starters. And those are the guys, for me, these 9 guys need the most repetitions. It's like a football coach with his quarterback. His starting quarterback gets most of the repetitions during practice. So that you want your best players to get the most repetitions. So, and then you have to decide here, you could go with 2 equal teams. Okay, now you go 2 equal teams, now you've got some of your best players playing with some of your worst players. And that's a situation that sometimes that kind of screws practice up. Because the real bad guys can't keep up with the good guys, and they're playing against each other. It's not realistic. It's not going to happen that way in a game unless you're playing a team that you can beat by 20 goals. So I try to just mainly have these 9 working together. And if you only have a team with 6 good players, And you gotta work these guys together as much as possible, those top 6. And they get more conditioning that way too. They can stay in the game longer without having to sub for them. So these are all things that you have to consider.
How do you, if your subs aren't that quality, like you said, your second, third tier, they're going against kids that aren't as talented, and unfortunately that becomes an issue of trying to bring their game up.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you go about it?
Well, eventually you gotta go 6-on-6, right? So, but I would do stuff like I would say, okay, we have a quarter left in the game, and my starting team, you're losing by 5 goals. And you're playing our second unit, they're winning by 5 goals. And at the end of practice, the team that's has the lead gets out early, and again, you're doing this little challenge thing. But so you're creating a situation here where in about 10 minutes time, those guys have to score 5 goals to at least get up and tie the other team. So I would also do a lot of small group stuff, 4-on-4, 3-on-3.
Smaller groups to help challenge the
that not only gives those guys more repetitions, but let's say you only have 6 good players, so you go 3 against 3 and do a lot of drills like your 3 best guys against the next best 3 guys, that sort of thing, or 4-on-4. We would do 4-on-4 tournaments, where they play each other. We keep scores, and you could only score a certain way, maybe off a drive, or you could score out of 2 meters, make up all these different things. But the nice thing about 3-on-3 and 4-on-4 is that it gives those players more repetitions. When you're playing 6-on-6, you're not getting as many repetitions. So, and it's not quite the same because it's not a full 6-on-6, but at the same time, it does give you more repetitions. And you can, when you think about it, you could go 4-on-4 and you don't have any wings. The wings don't do a lot anyway, in a game. Really, you hide somebody over on the wing, so they don't get much out of it anyway. So.
Yeah, one of the problems I have is because, like I said, with my shallow deep pool, I'm pretty much handicapped with giving the other guys stuff to do with work.
Yeah.
Coordinate. I tell everybody our pool is our handicap.
Yeah. I bet other teams you play hate to play in there. Though.
Oh, nobody wants to come in.
Yeah.
Plus we're out of town this way. Yeah.
And so wasting time, there's a lot of places, that you blow the whistle, okay, everybody over here. And there's always one guy that has to shoot the ball, and the ball was up on the deck, he goes after the ball, and meantime, we're standing over on the side of the pool waiting for him to go retrieve the ball, And I just, that's one of my rules. Blow the whistle, nothing, no shooting, nothing else, that's it. You look up at the coach, come over here, you sprint over to me, and no shooting the ball. So, just little things like that can really waste time. Let's see. Actually, lap swimming is kind of a waste of time because you're not getting that much out of it. So doing drills that don't apply to game situation is kind of a waste of time. It's just a token drill. And here, this is to our point right here about drills. Everybody does drills, and this has always been the way we've done things. But doing a drill incorrectly, or doing a drill that doesn't really apply to the game situation, is just as bad as not doing a drill at all. It doesn't do you any good. So the drills have to be like game situations. They have to be teaching some kind of a concept, and you can use a drill. Let me talk about drills just for a second here. There are 3 categories of drills, and depending on. But I would say that drills are probably one of the most abused forms of training. If it's not done right, it's a waste of time. It doesn't really teach what you want them to teach. I've already talked about the drills have to not only teach a skill, they also have to teach them how to use it. And so this is a real challenge as a coach, to be able to design drills that do both. So, now we have, what they call teaching drills. And this is the drill where you're introducing a new concept, a new skill, something they haven't done before. And so that's the only one you would do kind of in isolation, like maybe one-on-one driving, and you just have one person against another person. But you could do that one-on-one driving at 4 different goals. So, and you don't even need a goalie, you can put a field player in it. You just rotate a field player in there. And, because you're not worried about the shot that's going to be taken on the goalkeeper. You're more, what you're working on is getting that person open, figuring out how to get open in 4 different goals. So, now again, you've only got 2 coaches, then it's a little bit difficult, but one coach takes 2 goals, and the other coach, and on the other corner, can take 2 goals. So you kind of go back and forth. But, teaching drill, again, is made to introduce a new skill. This is where you would spend a little more time with them, working on a certain skill, making corrections as they go around doing it, giving them ideas on try this or try this, and do this. So this is more, you pay more attention, you stop it a little more often, and you stop, and it's a teaching moment, but then, again, keep the teaching moment short. Again, you don't have to give them a long talk. This is what you would use with younger players to teach them new skills, so you would do a lot more of that. Then you have what are called training drills. So now training drills are like the 3-on-3, 4-on-4, that kind of thing. You're teaching them a team concept, a game concept, where they have to work together, they have to make decisions, and so you take your game, okay, and there's a certain part of the game that you feel needs to work on. Okay, what's my problem? Our problem is we're having trouble, we're not setting screens, okay? So you design a drill where they have to set screens, and you don't tell them how to do it or when to do it. You've already taught them how to do a basic screen, but a teaching drill. Now you're going to do a 3-on-3, 4-on-4, and you give them you can only score off of a screen or something like that, and then you tell the defense to do different things too. If you want, maybe we're having trouble reading the defense, so you call the defense aside real quick and say, okay, the first time I want you to press, try to fight through the screen. The next time drop off the screen. The next time switch. The next time don't switch. So just get real quick. So they do, and the people that are setting the screen have to read the situation. So you're trying to, in a training drill, you're changing the situation, you're presenting different problems to them, and you're making them make decisions on what to do in a training drill. And then the last one is a competitive drill. Competitive drills are more where you really are in game situations. It's 6-on-6, pretty much. But on that 6-on-6, again, you have a theme. Again, this is really what Wooden was great at. At each 6-on-6 situation, you have a theme. It might be a thing like, okay, you might even give them a game situation. 2 minutes left in the game, you're leading by a goal, or you're losing by a goal. What do? Do you press and steal? Do you drive? Do you not drive? Do you conserve do you take chances? Do you take bad angle shots when you're leading by a goal? All these game situations. This is where you teach game situations in competitive drills. 6-on-6, once again, if you want to emphasize the counterattack, you tell them, okay, you get 2 points for a counterattack goal. You get 2 points for drawing exclusion on a drive, or you can only score off of a drive. You can't score out of 2 meters. And you can even penalize, like if a 2-meter player goes in there and stays too long and takes up a lot of valuable time, you say, okay, -2 points if you stay in there too long, and you got to have somebody that kind of sit in the side of the pool and can keep track of it. I hope you have a manager or a student that's not doing anything that wants to help out, can keep track of these kind of things. But this is where you pretty much are teaching game situations in your competitive drills. So this one here, you pay a lot of attention, and the teaching drills, you're constantly coaching and teaching. On the training drill, you're letting them go a couple, 2 or 3 times before you make a correction here or there. Let them try to figure that out on their own. You give them a problem, you let them try to solve it, and then you can help them after 2 or 3. On the competitive one, you don't stop it that much. Maybe you let them, maybe you're going to do, let's say you're going to do 3 minutes at the end of the game, one team leading by a goal. Let them do the whole thing. Let them do the whole thing, and then afterwards, then you can say, okay, you shouldn't, you're leading by a goal, and if you drive, you're driving, and that's the time we don't want to drive, because you could get an offensive foul, ball turns over, so you want to protect the ball as much as you can. You still want to be aggressive, when you're leading, you still want to be aggressive, and you still have to shoot the ball. Too many teams, when they get a lead, will just kind of sit there and relax. Look what happened to the Clippers the other night. If you watched that, but they had a big lead, and they just kind of stopped playing. So that's something that's really hard to guard against. So this is the stuff you teach in competitive drills. So each one, as you go along, you interrupt them less and less as you go from this kind of drill to this kind of drill to this kind of drill.
So over a course of a season, your earlier practices would be more towards teaching and training drills, and as the season progresses, it's going to move into more training and competitive drills? I mean, depending on the level of your team.
Actually, I would do more of these drills here during the off season.
Okay.
And then I would do these 2 during the season. There's another saying, how's it go? You make your players in the off season, you make your team in the season. So you teach in the off season is when you teach all these. This is the thing that gets me about off season, is you have off season workouts, and coaches will go will swim for an hour in an off season workout. So what do you care if they're in shape during the off season? I mean, it doesn't really matter, right? And that's the time you should be teaching them how to play the game. So you do your teaching drills, your training drills during the off season, and you can even do a little bit of this competitive stuff too. But once you get into your season, that's when you really have to get more into game situations. And hopefully you've already taught them all the skills they need, and you've already worked out some of these problems in the training drills, and so you've already taken care of that once your season gets started. I would do very few teaching drills during the season. But if you've only got these little kids for only one season, then you have to
hard to know.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Manage your group.
Yeah. By the way, these drills here, the training and the competitive drills, the players should already know the basics. They've already gone through all this, so they know a little bit about that. And then you're just making corrections on correcting a little thing. But when you make corrections, don't insist on every little detail being correct. It can drive you crazy as a coach, it can drive the players crazy. And your little finger should have been pointed this way, and your big toe should have been pointed that way. And I've had coaches that are they do a drill without a defender, and it's let's say you do, or maybe without a shooter. You got the whole team out there in the pool, and you're practicing corner defense on the 6-on-5. So you're practicing this thing like this, and then like this, and there's nobody shooting, there's no post player, it's not even in a game situation, it's just out in the middle of the pool, and coach is insisting that you gotta put this hand right here, and this hand has to go up here, and if they make that same mistake 3 or 4 times, and it's something that's really important, but you have to realize that there's more than one way to do things, it doesn't have to be exactly that way every single time. There's certain things that are important. Like if you're going to block the shot in the corner, well, why don't you put him in the corner and have somebody shooting the ball? you know, and then have a post player, have a player out here in the corner, and I'm on defense here, and have the pass person, and then they have to do that, you know, and they have to actually block a shot, you know, so that instead of just doing a drill without defenders or without shooters, or by the way, all your shooting drills should involve passing, and it should be everything should be game situation type of things. As I told you before on shooting, you know, we do the perfect line where two people going down the pool, I stop, they throw me the perfect pass from the right, and that doesn't happen in games. So, man, so design drills so the ball's coming from all over the place. Put the ball under pressure. Make the person with the ball have to draw a foul or pass the ball under pressure. And the ball's not going to come just perfectly right here. It's going to land here sometime. You know, what are you going to do with it? And let them come up with creative ways to handle the ball. You'd be amazed what some of these kids can do sometimes when the ball's not just perfectly thrown. And again, all angles. There's a saying, and now I can't remember what it is about shooting drills. I'll see if I can find it here. But you know, when you're doing drills, you have to ask yourself, okay, we're going to do this drill. Is it doing what it's supposed to do? You know, what are we trying to do with this drill? And just the worst thing you can do is do a drill just for the sake of doing a drill. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Bud Antilla. He was a coach at Delta JC years ago. He wrote a book, 100 Drills for Water Polo. And you know, you can't just go to the Antilla book and take the book out and go, okay, I'm going to use this drill, I'm going to use this drill and this drill. And yeah, make up your own drills. You know, I mean, there are coaches that have good ideas on drills, and you can get some ideas like that, but you just can't go to a book like that. Besides, the book was written back in 1950 or something like that. It's been around a long time, and the game has changed completely. So, you know, just don't do a drill just to be doing a drill. Make sure you involve defense. Make sure, I was coaching at the World University Games, and I worked with some coaches who would 6-on-5. This is one for 6-on-5. It had been around for a few years. So you have 6 players out there, no defenders, and the coach would stand up in the pool deck and say, all right, I've got these sequences all written out here. Okay, I want you to pass the ball 1-4, 4-5, 5-1, 1-6. You call out the sequence. No defenders, just passing the ball, you know, in these sequences. You don't do that in a game, you know, where you do a sequence like that, and then do that for like 20 minutes, and go, and every one was a different sequence. The kids aren't going to remember them anyway, and you're not going to do that in a game anyway. You're not teaching them to read the defense, what the defense is doing, and what kind of pass you should make. It's not a game situation at all. But this was just, talk about a drill that was completely worthless. Or how about running a screening drill without defenders? You know, we actually did that. This is one time when I was coaching the World University Games. And the guy would swim over and pretend like there was a defender there, and he'd stop and set, and the other guy would swim around, you know, but there's no defenders. I mean, to me, that was a complete waste of time. Put a defender in there, make the defense, change the defense. So I have to think, and I have to read, and I have to make decisions. So like I say, it's one of the most abused things that we do in coaching. It's not just water polo coaches. The coaches in other sports do the same thing. Drills are not. One more example. Went to a national team workout in Colorado Springs. They had a 10-day clinic, or not clinic, but training sessions out in Colorado Springs. And they were going, you know, there's 8 hours a day, and they would do 10 drills in a row. And each drill was a different thing. Something was 2 meters or something, defense, offense, all that. Not one of those drills was connected, and then not one of those drills went on to the big picture. You know, at least if you're going to do a drill like one of these teaching drills, your next step should be to go to one of these where you can utilize what you're teaching. But they would do 10 teaching drills and never go to this step, and never go to this step. And they should probably have it right, if you're gonna do it that way, have it one right after another. Do the teaching drill, and then whatever skill you teach there, maybe you have 2 skills there that you're teaching, and then you go here where you're using both those skills. And then you go here where everybody's involved, and you have to utilize those skills. That's better than just doing a drill and you're doing 10 drills and none of them are connected to each other. And then you go, and then after you do these drills, you go on to do something completely different, like maybe you go 6-on-6 scrimmage or something like that. There's just no connection between doing it. And our national team coach is a wonderful coach. He really knows the game, the Serbian game, and he knows how to. He's really a great 2-meter coach, because he's had the best 2-meter players in the world playing for him in Serbia and all that. But Jack, his assistant, who used to be at Pepperdine, is also really knows the game, understands the game. They love drills, and this is their idea of teaching something, is to do a lot of drills. And fine, but there's no carryover from the drill to the practice or the game, and that's the biggest problem, I think. I was going to say something to them, and I said, I don't think a Serbian coach just doesn't want to listen to an American coach anyway. So, and you know, the stuff he's teaching is great. I mean, the stuff they're teaching is fantastic. It's really good stuff, but there's just
Application.
the application. They don't do it in the game. You know, it drives you crazy. So.